In brightest day,
in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power, Green Lantern's light.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and one of the things that DC has really kind of been getting right are these 80th anniversary and these big milestone issues. Obviously, it started with Action Comics 1000, Detective Comics 1000, Wonder Woman 750, Flash 750. We've had a Robin 80th anniversary, Joker 80th anniversary, Catwoman 80th anniversary. I think I got all of them. And this week we got Green Lantern 80th anniversary, 100-page super spectacular. And here to talk to me about that is my good friend Dylan. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me back. I'm ready to talk about some Green Lantern.
Yeah, so obviously I am a big Green Lantern fan, so I was really excited about this one. I am not a big fan of anthologies, but I do think for the most part, the DC milestones have been pretty good. The one that I thought kind of had been the best before this was Wonder Woman 750. I thought that was actually really good, even though I thought that one had the least exciting creative team. But I think Green Lantern 80th anniversary kind of blew it out of the water, man. I think this is almost perfect. There's only a couple of spots in here where you're like, this doesn't feel right.
Yeah, it's pretty good for the most part. There are a few weak stories, but for the most part, yeah, they nailed it. And DC's done a great job with these, like with the Detective 1000, Action 1000, Flash 750. They've been doing a lot better than like Marvel 1000. DC's been nailing it with these for the most part.
And they definitely concentrated on a lot of the writers and artists that have had a big part in creating Green Lantern Lord. Obviously, we got Geoff Johns in here, Denny O'Neil. I believe this is the last story that he ever wrote. Ron Marz, Robert Venditti. So a lot of the writers that had a big part in creating Green Lantern, over the years, and I think they did a good job. So we can't talk about all of these. There's 10 stories. Before we did already talk about the James Tynion story on here on the channel. But what did you think of Gary Frank's art? I know you're a big fan.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing. Like every time you see it, because every time he's on a book, it's always like, oh, it'll go postponed or whatever. But then you see the art, and it's like, okay, it was worth it. I'll take waiting like an extra month when the art looks this good. Like, man, the way he draws Alan Scott and his expressions, just so perfect. He's my favorite artist.
Yeah, he definitely knocked it out of the park in this one. He did a great job. And that one, not a lot of action in that story, but I think he did a good job. So let's kind of get into the stories that I haven't talked about here on the channel. And let's just talk about Denny O'Neil first. This isn't kind of in order. The rest of them we will do in order as they came in. But Denny O'Neil, Mike Grell, Green Lantern and Green Arrow in Time Alone. I'm pretty sure this is the last comic he ever wrote. I love the campiness of this in the beginning. It's the Clock King, and my event was perfectly timed, but it turns out that's not really what the story is about. The Green Arrow is going a little too hard in the paint. Green Lantern has to stop him. Hal Jordan, you're going to kill the man. And they kind of have to work on some anger issues. What do you think about this one?
I liked it, especially because Hal and Ollie have like one of the best friendships in comics, and we haven't seen a lot of it as of late. It's been a while since that's really been expanded upon. So seeing Hal come in and sort of help his friend, seeing that his friend's getting a little too into it and a little too aggressive and being like, hey, I was there. I took 2 months and 2 days and read this book and really like sort of meditated on it, and it helped change my perspective. I like that. I like seeing friends helping friends, especially in this instance.
Yeah, it had to use a little Tom King in him, went there and took some classic lines from Thoreau, and it turns out Hal Jordan had kind of discovered himself reading this book, kind of taking the same journey that the writer had taken when he wrote it. And at the end, we see Ollie doing kind of the same thing. But I got to talk about the visuals, too, because I think Mike Grell knocked it out of the park. It was so much fun to look at, especially when things were happening. Like the colors were vibrant. The pencils were awesome. It was so cool.
Yeah, it was a great story. It was fun. It was short. And like you said, it started out all campy with Clock King on a train with like abducting a child and like having a bag full of money, and you don't know where it's going. And then you see Hal come in and sort of confront Ollie. And yeah, it was great all around. There's nothing really to dislike about this story.
Yeah, so I'm glad this one got in there. Obviously, Denny O'Neil was cast a huge shadow in comics. It was a huge loss for us. And I'm glad I got to read this, and it felt really special. Let's move on to some other Green Lantern creators. The first big one that I do want to talk about, Geoff Johns, Ivan Reis in Last Will. It's a Hal Jordan story. I thought this one was excellent. We know that it had been teased, obviously, in the promotion of the book. Hal Jordan lands on a planet. He doesn't know where he's at. His ring's malfunctioning. It's at like almost 0%. He can only send 3 messages out, and it's time for him to say his goodbyes. I thought it was really well executed, and we'll talk about the end here in a second.
Yeah, I liked it. I will say the second call was kind of disappointing. The call to Batman was disappointing for me. I felt like that's
like that because there's always been so much tension between the characters.
There's always been tension, but I really feel like in his last moments, if he had 3 calls, he wouldn't be calling Batman. I feel like it'd be like Ollie or Barry or someone. I don't think it would be Bruce. I don't think it'd be like, oh, Bruce, you were right. I wish I could have been more like you. That part. But besides from that, I really did enjoy the story. But that part, I was like, this doesn't feel like something Hal would do. I don't know. But yeah, aside from that, I did like it. I like his call to Carol and his call to the Green Lantern Corps. And then, of course, how it ends is great.
Yeah, because you feel like it's about to end and it looks like he's going to die.
Yeah.
Is his ring is malfunction. He's saying goodbye to the love of his life. And then he realizes that he's in Vegas. He had accidentally crash landed on Earth. And he'd accidentally send these messages out. And the last scene is pretty funny. But I thought it was pretty well executed. Nice little twist on the end. And it was a fun story. You wouldn't expect anything less from Geoff Johns. He obviously gets the character. And it felt like a good Hal Jordan story.
Yeah, it did. And the ending was great. It was so fun. Just everyone mocking him at the Justice League because he sent out all those emotional statements and everything to everyone, and now he's got to live it down. It's great when he just goes over the rock. It's like, wait, I'm in Vegas. It's like he's got this high tech ring and everything. Baby. Didn't realize he landed straight on Earth. It was a fun story.
Yeah, I enjoyed that one a lot. And then the art by Ivan Reis. I mean, I would have preferred it to be out in space because Ivan Reis is the best when it comes to space and stuff like this. But he absolutely knocked it out of the park. In the desert of Las Vegas.
Yeah, he killed, especially that one panel where he's crying and the ring's like slowly dying and he's talking to Carol. That panel is just, man, he kills it.
Yeah, it was like pretty emotional, like kind of getting to me. I didn't realize, obviously they didn't give away the big twist in the promo. I was like, well, man, this is really sad. Am I seeing how Hal is going to die in the end? It kind of felt like that was the story. And of course the name of the story kind of implies that.
Last one.
They pull the rug out underneath you, but yeah, it was really good. It was it's like pretty emotional. I thought, really good art. So this one is one that you liked more than I did. It's the Sinestro story from Cullen Bunn, The Meaning of Fear. Now I do love the art from Doug Mahnke, and we'll talk about that. But what did you think of Cullen Bunn's story with like kind of Sinestro seeing himself kind of from his own eyes?
I honestly liked that. I thought it was a pretty good story. I thought it's one of the better things that Cullen Bunn has written because for the most part, he's kind of an average writer. But he did a pretty good job with this. I love seeing Sinestro's twisted perspective on why he got ousted from the Corps. It's like, it wasn't anything he did because they feared him. I like seeing that. And then also him sort of just the arrogance he has and over this Green Lantern, and he just thinks he could easily manipulate him, get him to join his Corps. And of course, the art from Mahnke is incredible, especially that one page where you get Hal and Sinestro like as his creations, and they're just ginormous around him. These ginormous yellow figures. It looks so cool. And then in the end, the Green Lantern actually was a good guy. He's like, yeah, he's like, I'm not afraid. And then he just murders him. It was like a pity. I was like, oh man.
Kind of blows his head off with the yellow power of fear.
Yeah, I like that.
Sinestro thing to do.
Exactly. I thought it nailed Sinestro, and it was a good short story. I liked it.
Yeah, but it certainly did show why he thought that he was more powerful as using the power of fear combined with the power of will. I don't think he's fully wants to admit that he's forsaken the power of will and is only the power of fear now. I think he thinks he's the best of both worlds.
Exactly. He started talking about how it's like fear would help drive your will, because he's like, if you're not afraid to lose anything, then your will is useless, because what are you fighting for? And so I definitely thought his perspective in this book was very interesting, and I liked it. I thought Cullen Bunn nailed Sinestro here.
All right, so let's move on to another one that I thought was actually really good. Another one that had a great twist ending on it. Peter J. Tomasi and Fernando Pasarin in the Guy Gardner and Kilowog, The Heart of the Corps. I love Kilowog. I'm going to be honest. Hal Jordan's my favorite Lantern, but Kilowog might be my second favorite Lantern. He does not get enough playtime, and I love a story that's focused around him. And Guy Gardner is not my favorite character, although there's another story we're going to talk about here, which definitely highlights the greatness of Guy Gardner. But he was the perfect foil to Kilowog in the story.
Yeah, he was. It was great because it opened up with him just telling stories and like basically trying to get worshipped by these other Green Lanterns, just talking about how great he is. And then you see him leave and you're like, what's Guy up to? And then throughout the story, it's revealed what he's up to. But yeah, it's pretty great. I really enjoyed it. This was one of the sweetest stories in here, and definitely like just, made you get a bit emotional about the characters that you love. Because, if you like Kilowog and Guy Gardner, it's a very sweet story, especially with that ending. And the artist nailed also Kilowog's facial expression at the end too. It's just a really, really sweet story.
Yeah, it's good because Kilowog is so salty in this one. He's extra salty, and obviously Kilowog's always salty. And you're like, why is he more pissed than usual? And it turns out they're going to have to go to this planet. And Guy Gardner says we're going to hide behind this asteroid, and that way they can't see us when we come in. They're going on a rescue mission. They kind of get in there and they start rescuing, and they finally comes out. Kilowog realizes it's his birthday. They suckered him in there. They're actually on Mogo, which is basically terraformed itself to be the original planet, I think, where Kilowog is from. And they're celebrating his birthday, which is also the day when his planet was destroyed, and I guess everyone that he ever knew. So pretty emotional.
Yeah, his explanation at the end, talking about how his birthday is generally the worst day every single year because it reminds him of that's the day that everyone on his planet died but him. But then he's got his new family there with the core, and he's got his new purpose, and it's great. It's so nice. It was such a fun story. I did not expect that ending, and it was done perfectly. And I love how much Kilowog means to everyone in the core, that he the Mogo terraforms himself for him, and like so many members of the core are there, and even Guy Gardner, the selfish guy that he is there for Kilowog, because everyone realizes how important he is. It's a great story.
The biggest meathead who could never think about anybody is going on a special mission just to throw him the best surprise birthday party ever.
It's so Tomasi. I love it.
I'm kind of hoping Tomasi, if he has to leave Detective, man, get him on Green Lantern again, man. That's excellent.
Yeah, seriously, he loved writing Green Lantern Corps before. Put him back on there.
Yeah, he's certainly got a good feel for the character, and I love the way he executed. So we're going to talk about my personal favorite story in here now. Everyone, if you've been watching the channel, I love Robert Venditti. It's not just, this isn't my favorite story just because it's Venditti, but this is certainly the most emotional story in here. It's called 4. It's about the Hal Jordan, John Stewart, Guy Gardner, and Kyle Rayner. It's Hal, John, and Kyle. They're at a bar. They're older. Apparently, they meet up every year to kind of reminisce and think about the time they were in the Corps. They're telling war stories, and they're kind of joking that why are we always here first? Guy always kind of shows up late, and they're all having beers over a table. And it was just nice to see them as older men. You never really think of them as 3 older gentlemen or 4 older gentlemen getting together, talking about old times, kind of war stories. Something I've certainly done. I'm not old yet, but I've certainly got war stories and buddies to talk about it with. And it was just a really emotional. Obviously, Rafa Sandoval, who was one of the artists with Robert Venditti during his Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern Corps run, is on this. I think everything about it was damn near perfect.
I agree. This is my favorite story as well. It was done so well, and man, another one with a twist, sort of. I'd say about on the second page of it, though. I was like, wait, I kind of figured out the twist, and then you're like, no, and then it happens. But yeah, it's such a nice story, and them all reminiscing about these great times they had and their memories of Guy, and especially what was it, the one where he flew by his Sinestro naked. That one was great. When they're talking about that Sinestro was finally going to get him. He had the upper hand. He was going to beat him, and then Guy Gardner comes out of nowhere with the distraction. I loved it.
Yeah, it's just so well done. Just a love for the characters. I'll be honest with this. I've never really been a Guy Gardner fan, but there's an issue of Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern Corps, that Robert Venditti wrote. I think it's number 13, if I am correct. And that is a Guy Gardner-centric story, and it's basically him just having one of the most brutal fights you'll see in Green Lantern history. And and kind of showing you why Guy is the way that he is, why he's stubborn, why he's pig-headed, why he's kind of a meathead. and it made me have an extreme appreciation for Guy as a character. And Robert Venditti is really the only one that's ever really been able to do that for me. And he definitely reinforces that here. And they're kind of talking about it. And Jon Stewart, he's the greatest man I've ever known, and kind of explains why Guy Gardner always wanted to be the guy that was getting punched in the face. If the villains are out there trying to kill Guy Gardner and punch him in the face, they aren't trying to hurt his friends.
Yeah, it was such a nice ending there that Jon Stewart gives that little explanation at the end. How he was basically there as a distraction so his friends couldn't get hurt. I loved it. It was so nice. And yeah, Guy is a character who doesn't always get a whole lot of love, but it's nice when you get a writer like Venditti who really understands and really brings out what people love about the character into this book. And man, that ending was sad. We just see him get shot and then Stewart talk about what actually happened. But man, yeah, this definitely makes you appreciate Guy Gardner a lot more. If you weren't a fan of Guy Gardner, or if you're kind of on the fence, definitely read this story. It'll give you a new perspective, I feel like.
Yeah, and of course, at the end, we learn this is their 16th or 17th meeting at this bar. The reason they're there, they're having some drinks, reminiscing, and they're going to go to the gravesite of Guy Gardner and say goodbye to an old friend and a brother in arms as far as the Green Lantern Corps. And I just don't think it can be executed better than that. I mean,
there's not much better you could do here, and it was definitely, in my opinion, the best story of this 8th anniversary. It was done so well. I didn't think anything was really going to top the Tomasi story, and then I read this, and I was like, okay, this is definitely the best story of the book. And yeah, it's executed so well, and the pacing of it is perfect. Like there's no down part of it. Like they're just reminiscing about their war stories and Guy Gardner, what they remember about him, and then in the end, it's revealed that he's dead. And you see, you get that nice sort of little speech from John talking about why Guy was such a great character. And yeah, it was just a great story all around.
Yep, and then they talk about the 4 corpsemen. They put out the 4 fingers like the wrestling crew, the 4 horsemen. Love that, obviously. And yeah, such a good story. So I don't want to end on a high note here. We probably should, but I know there is one story in here that we both can agree definitely had the worst writing and probably the worst art as well. It's definitely the very last story in the whole thing. It's Sina Grace and Ramon Villalobos. It's the Baz Simon story. It just felt out of place. It didn't feel like it was paying homage to the Green Lantern or Simon Baz. It was just, I don't know, it was there.
Yeah, it didn't feel like that at all, because with these anniversary stuff, it's supposed to be a celebration of the character, and they're not like celebrating Simon Baz at all. It's literally just like trying to show you everything like Muslim Americans go through is what it sounds like. They're trying to do like, this is the average day in like a Muslim American's life. Like Simon Baz's aunt goes through security at the airport and they tell her to go back to her own country. They go to like a Muslim art walk and a white guy in a trench coat tries to shoot it up. And then like 5 other white guys in a van try to go and blow up a mosque. And so it felt so weird. It did not feel in place for this story. And also, of course, the art is just horrendous.
Yeah, Ramon's a different kind of artist. Obviously, he's done some other work. I know he did Border Town. There's another series I'm forgetting at the moment, but definitely not our favorite story. I like Simon Baz as a character. I wish maybe they had gone back and revisited, his temptations with guns and how hard it was for him to give that up, or maybe done something, out in the universe. These are intergalactic like policemen. It like I said, it fell out of the element. These are intergalactic like space cops. They should be going and doing big things. And virtually every other story revisit something in the history of the Green Lanterns, specifically to the characters that they're revisiting. And yeah, it doesn't feel like it was an homage. It was just like an anomaly in the book.
Yeah, it felt very out of place. It would have been cool to see Simon actually doing something. It felt more about his family than about him. It was just so weird. It was very out of place. But yeah, it would have been nice to see something a bit more focused on Simon Baz himself and something maybe in space instead of this just random story. So out of place. It was just odd.
So yeah, it was a weird way to end the comic book, but it was an ending. I'll give it that. So that is basically the stories we're going to talk about. There's obviously a few more, but we can only talk about so many stories in a 20-minute time and be able to give the best stories enough time. So overall, I thought this was excellent. This is my favorite milestone so far, even better than Action 1000 and Detective 1000. I know you're still partial to Action, I believe, correct?
Yes, I still believe Action 1000 is the best of any of these anniversary milestone issues.
I think this is definitely worth your $10, and so many good Green Lantern stories. If you're a Green Lantern fan, this is definitely worth your time and worth your money, in my opinion.
I agree. If you're a Green Lantern fan, this is definitely worth picking up.